Jamie was coming home from the grocery store with a bag full of food, excited to cook dinner. Outside the store, he noticed a dirty homeless man in white clothes. Normally, Jamie would ignore such people, but this man seemed different. Jamie had seen him several times in the past 2 weeks, always outside the store staring at him. This time, the man's intense stare felt unsettling. Curious, Jamie approached him and asked if he needed help. The homeless man's eyes welled up, staring at Jamie as if he could see into his soul, but he stayed silent. Despite the odd behavior, Jamie decided to give him the $100 he had in his wallet. "Spend it wisely," he said. Jamie then went to his car, feeling good about helping someone in need. He drove home smiling, thinking that he would probably never see that man up close again, but he couldn't have been more wrong. He didn't count on the huge surprise that arrived just 2 days later. Jamie was just making dinner when the doorbell rang. He didn't really have friends, and his neighbors did not contact him, so he wondered who it could be. He looked through the peephole in the door. Through the hole, he saw a man in an orange uniform. Jamie's face parted from the door as he closed his eyes and smiled. It was just the mailman. But his regained calm demeanor would soon be thrown off balance because what the mailman held in his hands was completely shocking. The mailman handed Jamie a large brown box and shrugged before leaving. Jamie used a box cutter to open it and found a note inside that made him shiver. The note had one sentence: "I spent it wisely." Jamie remembered saying that just 2 days ago. He wondered if the homeless man used the $100 Jamie gave him to buy this package. What could be so important inside? Jamie eagerly opened the box and found old slideshow pictures. They were very old and hadn't been made for years. How did a homeless man get these? He remembered finding an old slide projector in his basement and hoped it still worked. He grabbed the slides and set up the projector, hanging a white cloth on the ceiling. When Jimmy turned on the projector, it made a loud noise but soon displayed the images. The first slide made him tear up and cry. The slides showed over 100 pictures of him, some from long ago and others more recent, with dates up to 6 months ago. He had never seen these pictures before but felt a deep connection to the people in them. Jamie was frustrated and desperate to remember who these people were. He kept scanning the slides, hoping to find something familiar. His frustration grew, and in a fit of anger, he punched the side table, causing it to collapse and the projector to fall to the ground. Jamie snapped out of his anger just in time to catch the machine before it smashed into the ground. But when he caught it, he saw that the projector had made it to the last slide, and that slide turned out to be the most important one. There was no image on that one. Instead, the projection on the white canvas showed him a message. It sent a shiver through his body because it was a written message addressed to him personally. It even said his name. Jamie looked at the white canvas with tear-filled eyes. How can a $100 gift to a homeless person lead to all this mystery? The message was an invitation for later this evening. The image showed a time and address and a serious plea for him to go there. Seeing the message, Jamie fell into his chair. What did this all mean? Who was this homeless man? It was obvious to Jamie that the man must have known him because how else would he know where he lived? There was only one thing left to do now. He had to go to that address. The time scheduled on the invitation was in just over an hour, and looking at the indicated time on his Google Maps, he saw that the ride over there was almost that long. He had to get ready, so without a moment of hesitation, Jamie rushed upstairs, grabbed the car keys, and headed out. And he didn't drive slowly either. The car left his neighborhood in a hurry. Before he knew it, he was on the highway. It was a slow evening, so there weren't a lot of cars around, and navigation showed that it was at least 25 miles straight ahead. That gave Jamie time to think. While driving, he tried to think back on all the times he saw the homeless man. It all started a few weeks back. He had never seen the mysterious man before that, but once he showed up, it seemed like the young man was everywhere, always just waiting for Jamie to pass by. He focused as hard as he could, and out of nowhere, an image of the man flashed before his eyes. In the image, he wasn't wearing dirty clothes, but he was looking at him in the same way he did the last couple of weeks. The flash disappeared just as fast as it came, but it had consequences. It distracted Jamie from driving, and without him realizing it, he had steered his car in zigzag patterns across the road. He snapped out of it just in time to avoid hitting a guardrail. Wow, just in time. I better stay alert or else I won't make it to the appointment. After regaining focus, Jamie managed to arrive at the predetermined location. It was an old part of town where the streets were still filled with cobblestones, and at the end of that street stood an old-looking tavern. This is the address, right? I wonder what is waiting inside, Jamie spoke. The evening had now fully settled, making the scenery even more mysterious. Jamie walked up to the tavern and used the shimmer of the street lights to see what was going on inside. Visibly, he peeked through the window and saw that there were many people inside the tavern. It was time to face the music. Jamie took a final big breath and opened the front door of the establishment. What happened next was strange beyond belief. Jamie now stood in the doorway of the tavern, and within seconds, the busy tavern became as quiet as a mouse. Over 50 people who were chatting loudly just moments before had now all stopped talking. They turned around and all faced the confused Jamie. The sight made him tremble a bit, and what made it even more bizarre was that they were all wearing the same shirt. And it wasn't an ordinary white one. All shirts had his face printed on the front with his name written beneath it in bold letters. It was silent for just a moment after that because Jamie then broke the silence by screaming loudly, "What the hell is going on around here? Someone please explain this." There was one person in there who could explain everything perfectly and in great detail. You might guess who it is, and Jamie had the feeling that he would be there. The homeless man from 2 days prior stepped out of the crowd of people. He was wearing the same shirt. Jamie smiled at him for a second and thanked him for the invite, but immediately afterward, his frown turned strict again. "Please explain to me what is happening. I'm so confused," Jamie almost begged the man. The homeless man invited Jamie to sit down, then he would explain everything to him. Once seated, the homeless man introduced himself as Chris. Even though Jamie had already figured it out, Chris had to tell him that he was not a homeless man at all. He started keeping tabs on Jamie 2 weeks ago, standing outside that grocery store on purpose for a reason. But then the big surprise came, one Jamie could have never seen coming. The man said that he knew Jamie very well. He told Jamie that he was his brother. Jamie was in complete shock. "How can this be? How come I don't recognize you then?" he asked, starting to cry. Chris asked his brother if he remembered anything about the biking accident that occurred just over a month ago. Jamie nodded his head in agreement. He didn't remember the fall particularly well, but he remembered waking up in the hospital. He also remembered the doctor's explanation and the treatment afterward. "Well, that bike accident did a little bit more than simply bruise your arms and head. You fell on your head pretty hard, and after you woke up in the hospital, it appeared that the fall had damaged the part of your brain linked to memory. You had forgotten all about the people in your life, including your family and closest friends. That included me," his brother told Jamie. "Afterwards, the doctor advised us that it would be best to keep you at a distance and let the memories resurface slowly on their own. So we kept away and let you live in your bubble for a couple of weeks. But when the memories remained vacant in your mind after those 2 weeks, we had to try a different approach. The doctor said that it was radical and untested, but it was worth a shot. He called it his shock approach, and all this is part of that weird method," Chris said. Chris explained that it began with Jamie noticing short bursts of recognition while outside the store. Chris was the key to restoring Jamie's full memory. To trigger this, everyone Jamie knew had to confront him at once. And that, my brother, is now. Jamie stared at his brother, whom he didn't recognize yet. Chris was relieved the plan of the homeless man worked, but everything depended on this moment breaking Jamie's memory loss. "Do you remember me now? Do you recognize anyone?" Chris asked desperately. Jamie shook his head, and Chris's eyes filled with tears. Then a woman stepped forward from the crowd, and Jamie felt a jolt of recognition. She wore a shirt with his face on it. "Mom?" he asked. The sight of her caused a sharp pain in Jamie's head, but it jolted his memory. He recognized Chris, his best friend Samantha, and everyone else. Overwhelmed by the effort they put in, Jamie jumped up and hugged Chris tightly. "Thank you so much for doing this. I'll never forget it," Jamie said, crying. That moment marked Jamie's new beginning. He regained his memories and felt even closer to his family and friends, grateful and happy.